was supposed to be a quiet visit. David Beckham had arrived in the worn-down neighborhood of Eastbrook, just outside Atlanta, as quietly as any global icon could. No cameras, no entourage, no press release. Just him in a simple hoodie and faded jeans, slipping into a world where football wasn't on television. It was played with duct-taped balls in alleys and cracked courts. He'd come on a mission of empathy, to support a grassroots charity helping struggling families through sports. But what he witnessed that morning would ignite a firestorm neither he nor anyone in Eastbrook could have imagined. It happened just before noon. Beckham was standing near a small food cart on the corner of 5th and Madison, chatting in broken Spanish with an elderly vendor named Rosa who sold homemade empanadas to feed her grandkids. Her hands trembled as she handed him a paper plate, not because of who he was, she had no idea, but because of what she saw across the street. A police officer, tall, broad-shouldered, sunglasses masking his eyes, was striding toward her cart with the air of someone who'd done this before. Beckham felt the shift in energy before he even turned to look. "You know what time it is, Rosa?" the officer said coldly without greeting. "Don't play dumb." Rosa's eyes darted to the cash box. She didn't move. "You're late on your payment. Unless you want this whole thing shut down today, I suggest you cooperate." Beckham's jaw clenched. His first instinct was disbelief. Extortion? In broad daylight? He watched Rosa's hand hover uncertainly over the bills, her lips moving as if praying. Beckham took a step forward. "Excuse me," he said calmly. The officer turned. "This woman is just trying to make a living," Beckham continued. "You can't do this." The officer's expression hardened. "Who the hell are you?" "Just someone who doesn't like bullies." There was a beat of silence. The street, once buzzing with casual midday activity, seemed to hold its breath. A kid on a bicycle slowed to a stop. Someone across the street raised their phone, instinctively recording. The officer stepped closer to Beckham. They were nearly face to face now. "You must be lost, tourist. This is Eastbrook. We do things differently here." "Apparently," Beckham said, holding his ground. The officer's lip curled. "You sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, hero? If that means standing up to corruption, then yeah." What came next wasn't just verbal. With an explosive movement, the officer jabbed his finger into Beckham's chest, hard enough to stagger him back a step. Beckham didn't retaliate. He didn't flinch. His hands stayed at his sides. His silence was louder than protest. "This ain't your country, pal," the officer sneered. "And in case you forgot, interfering with police business is a crime." By now, more phones were out. A small crowd had formed. People whispered. Some gasped. One teen, a wiry boy in a torn hoodie named Malik, recorded the entire thing, barely breathing, knowing instinctively that this moment was bigger than it looked. Beckham looked around, catching eyes, feeling the quiet tension boiling in every direction. He looked back at the officer. "And abusing your badge is a bigger one." Rosa was crying now. She whispered, "Please, senor, just walk away. He'll come after me later." Beckham turned to her and in a low voice said, "Not if the world is watching." The officer suddenly shoved the empanada cart hard. It tipped slightly, one wheel jumping the curb. A few items fell to the ground. Rosa screamed. "You're underestimating who I am," the officer hissed. "And you're underestimating who you're messing with," Beckham said, still not raising his voice. He never once said his name. Never once pulled rank. He just stood, dignified, eyes locked on the injustice, letting the silence of his calm dismantle the violence in front of him. The officer paused. Maybe he recognized him now. Maybe not. But he knew something had shifted. The crowd wasn't afraid anymore. Phones were filming. People weren't moving away, they were stepping closer. "You'll regret this," the officer muttered, backing off a step. Beckham turned slightly, facing the small crowd. "This doesn't end here," he said, loud enough for them to hear. "We need to protect people like Rosa. This is her home, her business." And then, as if on cue, Malik walked up and stood beside him. Small, wiry, but brave. He held up his phone. "Already got it all," he said. "Everyone will see." Beckham looked down, smiled faintly, and nodded. The officer, now flustered, turned and walked briskly back toward his patrol car. The damage had been done, but so had something else, something deeper. The street exhaled. Rosa dropped to her knees, picking up what she could. Beckham bent down to help her. So did Malik. Others followed. In that quiet moment, Beckham wasn't a global icon. He was just a man doing what was right. And in a place like Eastbrook that made him dangerous to the wrong people. The world would learn about this soon. But for now, in that corner of forgotten America, a spark had been lit. and everyone there knew it. By the next morning, Eastbrook was no longer just a forgotten corner of Atlanta. Social media had caught fire overnight. The video Malik posted, David Beckham standing his ground against Officer Mitchell, racked up millions of views in a matter of hours. Hashtags like #StandWithRosa, #Justice in Eastbrook, and #BeckhamBrave began trending across platforms. But in the middle of that virtual storm, David Beckham remained grounded, still walking the same cracked sidewalks, still wearing the same hoodie, and still listening. He had returned to Rosa's corner just after sunrise. The cart was upright, but her hands trembled as she tried to boil water. Beckham took the kettle from her gently and silently helped prepare her stand. Rosa looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "They'll come back," she whispered, almost afraid to say the words aloud. Beckham looked her in the eyes. "Let them," he replied calmly. "But they won't come quietly anymore. The world is watching now." Meanwhile, inside the local precinct, Officer Mitchell sat at his desk, fists clenched. The video played on a loop on his monitor. His jaw flexed with each replay. His face was clear. His voice was unmistakable. His threats, undeniable. "That damn Brit ruined everything," he muttered. Mitchell had spent years building a network of fear in Eastbrook. Small-time extortion, protection, fees, planted evidence. None of it had ever made headlines. The neighborhood was poor, isolated, and broken. Fear was stronger than justice. That was until Beckham. Until someone came who didn't need anything from the system and had nothing to lose. He picked up the phone and called a colleague. "Watch Beckham. No one interferes with my neighborhood." Later that day, Beckham walked through the weed-riddled lot where an old recreational center once stood. The paint was peeling, the chain-link fence sagged, and the broken basketball hoop looked like a skeleton of better days. Malik trailed behind him, recording short videos on his phone. His feed had blown up overnight. Thousands of new followers, hundreds of messages. "Yo, Mr. Beckham," Malik called. "Why'd you do it? You didn't even know Rosa." Beckham turned, smiled softly. "Because she reminded me of my mom." Malik blinked. "Your mom sold empanadas too?" Beckham chuckled. "No, but she worked hard every day. Honest work. No one should be punished for trying to survive." They walked together toward the collapsed goalposts on the soccer field. "You see a field," Beckham said. "I see potential. What if we cleaned this up? Made it playable again?" "You serious?" Malik asked. Beckham crouched to pull weeds from the goal line. "Only if you help lead it." Word traveled fast. That afternoon, Beckham showed up at the lot again. No cameras, no security, just gloves, a rake, and 2 garbage bags. He began clearing the field, methodically and without complaint. Rosa arrived an hour later with sandwiches. A few kids came to watch. Then they picked up trash. Then more came. By the evening, a small army of volunteers had filled 6 trash bags. Beckham was soaked in sweat, his hoodie stained with dirt, but he never looked happier. He high-fived Malik after they unearthed a full set of rusty goalposts beneath an ivy wall. From across the street, Deja watched. Her son had been arrested 6 months earlier, resisting a search, they said, though he'd just been walking home from school. She crossed her arms, skeptical but curious. When Beckham spotted her, he walked over. "You think this changes anything?" she asked. "No," Beckham replied. "But it starts something." Deja picked up a rake and joined the others. That night, Malik's follow-up video, Beckham clearing trash with locals, hit 1 million views. Major news outlets started circling. The New York Times called. ESPN asked for an interview. Beckham declined them all. "This is about them," he told his assistant over the phone, pointing toward a group of kids juggling a deflated ball. But Officer Mitchell wasn't finished. At the precinct, he called in favors. "He's stirring up trouble," Mitchell growled. "Find a reason to shut him down." One officer raised an eyebrow. "He's not doing anything illegal." "Everyone's got something," Mitchell snapped. The next day, Beckham showed up with paint and cones. A few local fathers brought tools. One had a lawnmower. The field began to transform. But that afternoon, 2 squad cars parked across the street. The officers inside didn't say anything. They just watched. Beckham noticed but didn't flinch. Instead, he kicked a ball across the field and called out to the kids. "Let's run drills." They formed lines, ran sprints, practiced passes. The joy was contagious. That evening, Rosa pulled Beckham aside. "They're watching you now. You scare them." Beckham nodded. "Good. Fear can go both ways." 3 days later, Rosa's stand was tipped over again. This time, no officer was seen. No badge number. Just her card on its side, sauces spilled on the pavement. Beckham arrived minutes later and helped clean up. But Malik noticed something. A man in a parked car taking photos with a telephoto lens. He pointed him out. Beckham calmly approached. The man drove off. "They're trying to intimidate you," Malik said. Beckham looked him in the eye. "Let them try." That weekend, Beckham and the community hosted a pop-up event on the half-revived field. Music played from a borrowed speaker. Local vendors brought food. Kids played, laughed, competed. Even some adults joined the games. Beckham gave no speech. Instead, he passed out new cleats, donated quietly through his charity. He smiled and watched. "Mr. Beckham," an old man said as he shook his hand, "you've done more in a week than our city council in 10 years. But the darker forces were stirring. Inside the precinct, Mitchell received a file. Photos, phone records, background checks. "You sure you want to go this far?" another officer asked. "He embarrassed me," Mitchell snapped. "He exposed me. Now I expose him." The officer looked at the file. "There's nothing illegal here." "Then plant something," Mitchell said coldly. That night, Beckham walked back to his rented apartment. As he passed an alley, he heard footsteps. Then two shadows blocked his path. "You need to leave," one of them said. Beckham stopped. "Why?" "You're making things difficult." Beckham raised an eyebrow. "Difficult for who? You think people like Rosa matter? They're just noise. This place belongs to people who can keep it in order." Beckham stared at him, unblinking. "Order doesn't mean fear." The man smirked. "Fear works." Beckham took a step closer. "Until someone stops being afraid." A car's headlights appeared. The men vanished. The following morning, Beckham showed up again at the field. Same hoodie. Same resolve. But his presence carried new weight. The community sensed it. Something was coming. But no one knew what. Only that Eastbrook would never be the same again. The third morning dawned darker. Not because of clouds, but because something intangible loomed over Eastbrook like a curtain slowly being drawn. David Beckham felt it in the stillness of the air, in the unusual hush of the streets, in the way even the kids whispered as they played near the newly restored goalposts. But it wasn't until he saw the cop cars circling the block twice, 3 times, that he knew something was off. Still, he didn't stop. Beckham arrived at the field wearing the same hoodie and work gloves, ready to pick up where they'd left off. More community members had joined in recent days, parents, teens, even 2 former gang members who quietly swapped bandanas for trash bags. Something was shifting in Eastbrook and everyone could feel it. But just as Malik handed Beckham a can of spray paint to stencil new boundary lines, 3 squad cars rolled up, tires grinding on gravel, and stopped at the edge of the park. Doors opened. Officer Mitchell stepped out slowly, surrounded by 2 younger officers. He wasn't wearing sunglasses this time. He wanted Beckham to see his eyes. "David Beckham," Mitchell barked. Beckham turned, resting the paint can on the grass. "Yes. You're under arrest. Step away from the kids." The entire field froze. Malik's phone was already up. "On what charge?" Beckham asked calmly, arms raised slightly. "Interfering with police operations. Obstructing justice. Resisting lawful order." "Want me to keep going?" There was a silence as deep as the breath before a storm. "That's ridiculous," Rosa cried, stepping forward. "Ma'am, back off unless you want to join him," one officer snapped. Beckham walked forward, not resisting but not conceding either. "You're making a mistake." Mitchell smiled. "No, you did." They cuffed him in front of the children. Rosa sobbed. Malik yelled that he was recording everything. Beckham looked back only once, to Malik, and nodded faintly. "This is bigger than me," he mouthed. They threw him into the back seat. No Miranda rights. No explanations. No words. Just the slam of the door and the hum of the engine as the car pulled away. Beckham didn't speak. He knew what this was. Power move. Retaliation. At the precinct, they kept him in holding for hours. No phone call. No charges filed. When he finally asked for legal representation, Officer Mitchell himself walked in. "You think people care about you here?" Mitchell sneered. "You're just a distraction. They'll forget you in a week." Beckham looked at him steadily. "You're afraid. That's why you're doing this." Mitchell leaned in close. "I'm cleansing my neighborhood of outsiders." Beckham gave a soft smile. "That's not how it works anymore." Mitchell slammed his fist on the table. "I own this place." "No. You fear it's slipping away." Meanwhile, outside the station, a protest was forming. Small at first, Rosa, Malik, Deja, But it grew fast. Word spread like wildfire. Dozens turned into hundreds. Local news vans arrived. Then national ones. Chanting started, "Justice for Beckham. Justice for Eastbrook." Inside his holding cell, Beckham heard it. The muffled roar. He closed his eyes. He hadn't intended this. But it was happening. It was real. Mitchell returned, angrier. "They're making this worse for you." "No," Beckham said softly. "They're making it right." Mitchell left again. An hour later, Beckham was quietly released. No explanation. No charges. Just silence. He stepped outside into a wall of cheers. Malik ran to him and hugged him fiercely. Rosa wept openly. Deja was already giving an interview on camera. Beckham raised his hand, not to wave but to silence the crowd. "I'm not your hero," he said. "You are. You did this. Not me." Malik shouted back, "Then lead us." That evening, Beckham sat on the steps of the rec center as news coverage played from nearby phones. Commentators debated, politicians weighed in. Donations poured into the Eastbrook Community Fund. And still, Beckham sat quietly, staring at the cracked concrete. "Why'd you come here?" Rosa asked softly, handing him tea. He paused, then answered, "To remind people what they're worth. And maybe to remind myself too." From across the street, Mitchell sat in his cruiser, face tense. He turned the key but didn't drive away. Eastbrook was slipping through his fingers. And Beckham wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. The morning sun spread a dull golden hue across Eastbrook, but beneath that soft glow, the energy was anything but calm. Overnight, the local news had exploded with coverage of Beckham's wrongful arrest. Footage of his detainment had gone viral, now reaching millions. It wasn't just trending, it was making headlines around the globe. David Beckham awoke to the sound of helicopters hovering over the rec center and phones ringing non-stop. But he didn't check any of them. Instead, he sat on the cracked concrete porch of his temporary Eastbrook apartment, sipping black coffee and watching the quiet stirrings of the street. People passed by, some giving him discreet waves, others stopping for hugs. There was something sacred in their silence. The neighborhood wasn't just alive, it was awakening. At 9 a.m., Beckham convened a meeting in the now-functioning rec center. The space was no longer dilapidated. Though the paint still peeled and half the lights flickered, there was life inside. Folding chairs formed a rough circle. In them sat Malik, Rosa, Deja, two retired teachers, a local youth pastor, a mechanic who'd been born 3 blocks over, and several others. "This is it," Beckham began. "We've pushed the wall. Now we build something that stands." He proposed the creation of a Community Civil Accountability Network, CCM, a permanent, resident-led watchdog group to track police behavior, document abuses, and offer protection to whistleblowers. Rosa would oversee local vendors' rights, Deja would advocate for youth and education, Malik, now a trusted face in digital activism, would run the media and outreach wing. "Structure beats chaos," Beckham said. "They expect outrage. They fear organization." The vote was unanimous. Elsewhere in the city, the walls began closing in on Officer Mitchell. Internal Affairs had already interviewed 6 officers. 2 had agreed to testify. Anonymous tips flooded hotlines. Archived body cam footage mysteriously surfaced, dating back years, showing intimidation, illegal searches, planted narcotics. Mitchell was losing his grip. That same day, the mayor's office issued a formal apology to Beckham and announced a review of policing in Eastbrook. But Beckham refused to take a photo op. Instead, he sent a statement. "No single apology can replace accountability. Fix the roots, not just the headlines." Beckham returned to the field later that evening. Volunteers had finished repainting the boundaries. Speakers played upbeat music, and a food truck donated by a local restaurant served free meals to kids. The energy was celebratory yet focused. "I thought this was just about soccer," a teenage girl said to Beckham. He smiled. "Everything's about more than what it seems." A few kids played a scrappy 3v3 game. Beckham joined in. The field erupted in laughter as he fumbled a pass. Meanwhile, Malik captured it all on his live stream. Thousands tuned in. But that night, Mitchell made one final move. He approached Beckham alone in plain clothes just outside Rosa's corner stand. Beckham was helping her restock when Mitchell's shadow appeared. "You think this ends with me?" he hissed. Beckham turned calm. "It ends with truth. You made me the villain. But they loved me before you came. I kept them in line." "No, you kept them afraid. You don't belong here." Beckham stepped forward. "Maybe not. But what I stand for does." Mitchell's eyes twitched. "This isn't over. He walked off into the darkness. Beckham exhaled. Rosa gripped his arm. "You okay?" "I am now." The next morning, Eastbrook buzzed with even greater momentum. Beckham and the CCN team held a public town hall, outdoors on the freshly restored field. Speakers included families who had once stayed silent, local teens reading spoken word pieces about justice, and a grandmother whose son had been wrongfully imprisoned 5 years earlier. Deja read a petition to pass a community-driven reform bill. It called for transparent officer assignments, body cam requirements, and a civilian review board. Over 5,000 residents signed within 24 hours. Reporters from national networks covered the event: ESPN, CNN, NPR. But Beckham never stepped onto the stage. He chose to sit with the kids, listening. "This isn't my movement," he told one interviewer. "This is theirs." The climax came at a city council meeting 3 days later. Beckham took the podium, this time in a gray hoodie and jeans. No PR team. No prepared speech. "I'm not a politician. I'm not even American. But I know right from wrong. I've seen neighborhoods like Eastbrook in every corner of the world. Forgotten. Neglected. Abused. But I've also seen them rise. I saw that here. Not because I showed up, but because they did." He turned to face the mayor. "Don't make them fight for attention again. Fix the system. And stay out of their way." Thunderous applause. By the end of the week, Officer Mitchell was formally suspended, pending criminal investigation. The city council approved the civilian review board. Rosa's license to operate was fast-tracked and made permanent. Deja started receiving school supply donations from around the country. Malik was offered a community journalism grant. And Beckham? He stayed for one last game. That Saturday, the sun glistened over a full-size match between Eastbrook United, the new name of the youth team, and another neighborhood. Hundreds came out. Beckham played goalie, jokingly blaming age for his slow dives. Rosa sold out of empanadas in 30 minutes. Malik danced at halftime. Deja gave a short speech but ended it by handing the mic to a 10-year-old boy who said, "We're not scared anymore." That evening, Beckham packed his bags. He left a handwritten note taped to the rec center door. "This place gave me more than I gave it. Keep fighting. Keep building. I'll always be watching. DB." As he drove away, Eastbrook wasn't the same. It was better. And it wasn't finished.